The sound of laughter coming from my bedroom made my blood run cold. Not just any laughter, feminine laughter that definitely wasn't mine, mixed with my husband's deep chuckle. I stood in the doorway of our house, my suitcase still in hand from my 3-day business trip to Atlanta, trying to process what I was hearing. My name is Zara Johnson and I thought I knew my life. I'm 32, a successful financial advisor with my own practice, and I've been married to Ryan for 8 years. We have a beautiful home in an upscale neighborhood, joint business ventures, and what I believed was a solid marriage. That belief was about to be shattered in the most horrific way possible. As I climbed the stairs, the voices got clearer. Ryan was talking to someone about paint colors for the bathroom. Paint colors. Like this person was planning to be here for a while. My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might explode. I pushed open our bedroom door and nearly dropped my suitcase. There was a woman in my bedroom, a young blonde woman I recognized as Brittany, Ryan's former secretary, sitting on my side of the bed in nothing but Ryan's dress shirt and underwear. Suitcases were scattered around the room. Her clothes were hanging in my closet. Her makeup was spread across my vanity table. Ryan looked up at me with the most casual expression, like I'd just walked in on him watching television. "Oh hey babe. You're back early," he said, not even standing up from where he sat on the edge of the bed. "We need to talk." Brittany smiled at me, actually smiled and gave a little wave. "Hi Zara. I've heard so much about you." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there staring at this scene that made no sense. This had to be a nightmare. Maybe I was still on the plane and this was some terrible stress dream. "Zara, sit down," Ryan said, patting the chair near our window. "Brittany and I have been together for 6 months now. We're in love and she's moving in permanently." The words hit me like physical blows. 6 months. 6 months of lies, of him kissing me goodbye every morning, of family dinners and couples therapy sessions he suggested to strengthen our marriage. Moving in. I finally managed to croak out. "Yes," Ryan said matter-of-factly. "Look, I could have handled this by asking for a divorce, splitting everything 50-50, losing half my business interests. But I figured this way works better for everyone. You get to keep your comfortable lifestyle, I get to be happy, and Brittany gets the family life she wants." Brittany nodded enthusiastically. "We know this is an adjustment, but Ryan thinks it's the most mature way to handle things. Lots of cultures have polygamous arrangements." I felt like I was falling through the floor. "You want me to live here while you two are together?" "It makes perfect financial sense," Ryan explained, as if we were discussing a business merger. "The house is paid off. Our business accounts are joint. Why complicate things with lawyers and division of assets when we can just adapt to a new normal?" "I've already moved my stuff into the guest room," Brittany added helpfully. "Well, most of it. I'll need more closet space, but we can figure that out." I looked around the room again. This wasn't the guest room. This was our master bedroom. Our bed where we'd made love, where we'd talked about having children, where I'd cried when my mother died last year. "Where exactly am I supposed to sleep?" I asked. Ryan shrugged. "The guest room is available. Or the couch. We can get you a nice air mattress." The casual cruelty of it made my head spin. He wanted me to become some kind of live-in servant while he played house with his girlfriend. "I know it seems weird now," Brittany said, standing up and smoothing down the shirt, my husband's shirt. "But I think we could be friends. I've always admired successful women like you." "Friends?" She wanted to be friends while sleeping with my husband in my bed. "Ryan," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady, "you can't be serious about this." "I'm completely serious," he said. "Look, Zara, we both know our marriage has been more like a business partnership for the last few years anyway. No passion, no real connection. This way, I get what I need emotionally, you keep your financial security, and nobody has to go through a messy divorce. What if I don't agree to this?" Ryan's expression hardened slightly. "Then we get divorced and you lose half of everything. The house, the business, the investment properties. You'd have to start over. Is that really what you want?" I looked at both of them sitting there so casually, so confident that I would just accept this insane arrangement. Ryan thought he had all the power because our assets were joint, because he'd built his real estate business using both our investments. "I need some time to think," I said finally. "Of course," Brittany said brightly. "This is a big change for all of us. Maybe we could all have dinner together tonight? I make amazing pasta." She was going to cook dinner in my kitchen, serve it at my table, and expect me to sit there like this was normal. Ryan stood up and put his hand on my shoulder. "I know this isn't what you expected, but trust me, this arrangement will work out better for everyone. You're a smart woman, Zara. You'll see the logic in it." I nodded and walked out of the room, my mind reeling. As I closed the door behind me, I heard Brittany say, She took that better than I expected. Ryan laughed. I told you she'd be practical about it. Zara always chooses the smart financial move. They had no idea how right they were about that. And they had no idea what kind of smart financial moves I was about to make. The next morning, I woke up on the living room couch with a crick in my neck and the sound of giggling coming from the kitchen. I'd spent the night there because I couldn't bring myself to knock on the guest room door and ask Brittany to move her things. The whole situation still felt like a nightmare I might wake up from. But the nightmare was very real and it was about to get worse. Ryan appeared in the doorway wearing his bathrobe, holding a cup of coffee and a piece of paper. Behind him, I could hear Brittany humming while making breakfast. "Morning, babe," he said as if nothing had changed. Brittany made coffee. "It's really good." I sat up, trying to smooth down my wrinkled clothes from yesterday. "Ryan, we need to talk about this situation." "Actually, that's perfect timing," he said, handing me the paper. Brittany and I stayed up late talking, and we came up with some household guidelines to make this transition smoother for everyone. I looked down at the paper. At the top, in Brittany's bubbly handwriting, it said, "House Rules for Happy Living," with little hearts drawn around it. I started reading. Breakfast is served at 7 a.m. sharp. Zara's turn to cook Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Dinner should be ready by 6 p.m. rotating schedule to be determined. Master bedroom is off limits to Zara after 9 p.m., private time for couple. Grocery shopping and household errands to be split 3 ways. Cleaning schedule. Zara handles bathrooms and laundry, Brittany does kitchen and living areas, Ryan takes care of outdoor maintenance. Guests must be approved by both Ryan and Brittany before inviting them over. Quiet hours after 10 p.m. on weeknights. All major household decisions require majority vote, 2 out of 3. I read the list twice, each item making me angrier than the last. "You want me to cook for you and your girlfriend?" "It's about sharing responsibilities," Ryan said, sitting down across from me. "We're all adults here." Brittany bounced into the room carrying a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. She was wearing one of my robes, my favorite silk robe that cost $300. "Good morning, Zara," she chirped. "I hope you slept okay. The couch doesn't look super comfortable. Maybe we can get you a better pillow today." She set the plate down in front of Ryan, kissed him on the cheek and plopped down next to him. The casual intimacy of it made my stomach turn. "About these rules," I said, holding up the paper. "Oh, you read them. What do you think?" Brittany asked excitedly. "I tried to make it fair for everyone. I know it's your house, but Ryan and I want to contribute too." "It's our house," Ryan corrected. "Zara and I both own it." "Right, of course," Brittany said. "I just meant I don't want to be a burden. I want to earn my place here." Earn her place? In my house? By making me clean toilets while she played housewife with my husband. "What if I don't agree to these rules?" I asked. Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. "Zara, we're trying to make this work. The alternative is divorce, which means selling the house, splitting all our assets, and probably destroying my business in the process. Is that really what you want?" "Your business that I helped fund," I reminded him. "Exactly. Which is why this arrangement makes sense. You keep your investment protected, I keep my business running, and we all get what we need." "What exactly do I get out of this?" "Financial security," Ryan said. "No legal fees, no asset division, no starting over from scratch. Plus, you get help around the house. Brittany's actually a great cook." Brittany beamed. "I love cooking. And cleaning. I find it really relaxing." I stared at her. She was 26, beautiful in that fresh-faced way that comes with youth, and apparently thrilled to be a live-in girlfriend who did housework. Had I ever been that naive? "There's one more thing," Ryan said, pulling out another paper. "I had my lawyer draw up a cohabitation agreement. It just formalizes our arrangement and protects everyone's interests." I took the document and started reading. It was worse than I thought. According to this agreement, I would essentially become a tenant in my own house, with Brittany and Ryan as the primary household decision makers. I would have no right to change locks, redecorate, or invite guests without their approval. In exchange, I got to keep living there and maintain access to our joint accounts for reasonable personal expenses. "This is insane," I said. "It's practical," Ryan replied. "Look, I know it's not ideal, but it's better than the alternative. You're a financial advisor, Zara. You understand the numbers. A divorce would cost us both a fortune. We could just get a simple divorce. I don't need half your business." Ryan laughed. "Right. You'd really walk away from millions in assets because of hurt feelings?" Hurt feelings? 8 years of marriage and he thought this was about hurt feelings. "I need to think about this," I said. "Of course," Brittany said. But maybe while you're thinking you could start breakfast? I promised Ryan I'd help him pick out new tiles for the bathroom today. The bathroom. They were redecorating our bathroom together. I looked at both of them sitting there so smugly, so certain they'd cornered me into accepting this degrading arrangement. Ryan thought he knew me so well. He thought I'd choose financial security over dignity, that I'd rather be humiliated than lose money. He was about to learn he was wrong about a lot of things. Okay, I said, standing up. I'll make breakfast. Ryan smiled. See? I knew you'd be reasonable about this. As I walked toward the kitchen, I was already making plans. Ryan had made one crucial mistake in his calculations. He thought I needed him to keep my financial security, but I was the financial advisor in this family. I knew exactly where our money was, how it was invested, and how to move it. And Ryan was about to find out that there's a big difference between being smart with money and being smart about people. I started cooking eggs while my mind raced through possibilities. If they wanted to play house, I'd let them. Right up until the moment I pulled the rug out from under both of them. That afternoon, while Ryan and Brittany went tile shopping like a happy couple, I sat in my home office and did what I do best: followed the money. I'd been married to Ryan for 8 years, but I'd been his financial advisor for 10. I knew every account, every investment, every business deal he'd ever made. What I was discovering now, though, made my hands shake with anger. The affair had been going on for 6 months, but the financial betrayal had been happening for longer than that. Much longer. I pulled up our joint checking account first. Over the past year, there had been charges I hadn't questioned: dinners at expensive restaurants on nights when Ryan said he was working late, jewelry purchases around Valentine's Day that I never received, hotel rooms in the city when he claimed to be meeting clients. But that was just the beginning. Ryan's business account showed payments to something called Coleman Consulting, going back 8 months. Brittany's last name was Coleman. He'd been paying his secretary as a fake consultant while she was still working for him. That was tax fraud right there. I dug deeper. There were cash withdrawals from our business investment account, money that was supposed to be locked in CDs and long-term investments. Ryan had been slowly draining our shared savings to fund his affair. The worst discovery came when I accessed our real estate investment portfolio. 3 months ago, Ryan had refinanced 2 of our rental properties without telling me. The properties were in both our names, but somehow he'd managed to pull equity out of them. The money had gone into a new account, one that only had his name on it. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. This wasn't just an affair. This was systematic financial fraud. Ryan had been stealing from our joint assets to fund his relationship with Brittany, and now he was trying to trap me in some sick arrangement where I'd be too humiliated to fight back. My phone rang. It was my best friend Imani, who was also my business partner at our financial consulting firm. "Girl, how was Atlanta?" she asked. "Did the Hendersons decide to go with our retirement plan?" "Imani, I need to see you. Can you meet me somewhere?" "Of course. Is everything okay? You sound weird." "Everything is not okay. Can you meet me at that coffee shop on 5th Street in an hour?" "I'll be there." An hour later, I sat across from Imani in a corner booth, trying to explain the impossible situation I'd come home to. Imani listened with her mouth hanging open, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. "He wants you to live there while he's with this woman," she said for the 3rd time. "And follow their house rules. And cook for them. Zara, that man has lost his mind. You know that, right? It gets worse." I pulled out my laptop and showed her what I'd discovered about our finances. Imani was a financial planner too, so she understood immediately what she was looking at. "He's been embezzling from your joint accounts," she said. "This Coleman Consulting thing is clearly fake. And these property refinancing. Zara, he needed your signature for this." "How did he?" "Power of attorney," I said miserably. "He has it for business purposes in case something happens to me while I'm traveling. I never thought he'd use it to steal from me." Imani leaned back in her seat. "This is criminal. You could have him arrested." "I could. But I have a better idea." "What do you mean?" I pulled up another screen on my laptop. "Look at this. Ryan's business has been struggling for the past year. His cash flow is terrible, but he's been using our joint assets to keep it afloat. Without our money propping him up, his company would have failed months ago. So what if it did fail?" Imani stared at me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Ryan thinks he's so smart, manipulating me into this arrangement because he believes I need him financially. But the truth is, he needs me. Our money, our credit, our joint assets, that's what's keeping his business alive." "Zara, what are you planning?" I closed the laptop and looked at my best friend. "Ryan wants to play games with our marriage and our money? Fine. But he's about to learn that I'm much better at this game than he is. This sounds like you're planning revenge. I'm planning justice. There's a difference. Imani was quiet for a moment. What do you need from me? I need a business partner who's ready to go independent. Your contract with our current firm is up for renewal next month, right? Yes, but what if we started our own company? Just me and you. I have clients who would follow me, and I'm betting some of Ryan's clients might be interested in switching to someone who actually has their best interests at heart. Imani's eyes lit up. You want to compete with him. I want to destroy him. Professionally and financially. But I need to be smart about it. I need to protect myself first, then take him down piece by piece. What about the house? Your joint assets. That's the beautiful part, I said, smiling for the first time in 2 days. Ryan thinks those assets trap me, but they're actually going to trap him. He can't afford to lose me even if he doesn't realize it yet. This is risky, Zara. What's risky is staying in that house and letting him and his girlfriend treat me like a servant while he steals my money. At least this way I'm fighting back. Imani nodded slowly. Okay, I'm in. What's the first step? I need to see a lawyer. A really good one. Someone who understands both divorce law and business fraud. I know someone, Imani said. Jerome Williams. He handled my cousin's divorce last year, and he specializes in complex financial cases. He's tough, smart, and he doesn't back down. Can you get me an appointment with him tomorrow? I'll call him tonight. I felt something I hadn't felt since walking into my bedroom yesterday. Hope. Ryan thought he was so clever, trapping me in his sick fantasy. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. As I drove home to face another night of sleeping on my own couch while my husband played house with his girlfriend, I was already planning their downfall. Ryan wanted to play with fire. He was about to get burned. Jerome Williams had the kind of office that screamed success, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture, and law degrees from Harvard covering the walls. But what impressed me most was how he listened. Really listened without interrupting or judging. I'd spent the last hour laying out everything: the affair, the living arrangement, the financial fraud I'd discovered. Jerome took notes in neat handwriting and asked pointed questions that showed he understood both the legal and emotional complexity of my situation. So let me make sure I understand, he said, setting down his pen. Your husband moved his mistress into your marital home, expects you to serve them both, and has been systematically stealing from your joint accounts to fund his affair. That's right. And instead of immediately filing for divorce, you want to explore other options. I want to protect myself first. Ryan thinks he holds all the cards because our assets are joint. I want to make sure when I do file for divorce, I'm not the one who gets destroyed financially. Jerome smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who just spotted prey. Mrs. Johnson, I have to say, your husband has made some very serious legal mistakes. The unauthorized use of power of attorney, the fake consulting payments, the property refinancing without proper disclosure, any one of these could land him in criminal court. But criminal cases take time and they don't necessarily get you your money back. Civil court, on the other hand. He leaned forward. Civil court is where we can really make him pay. What do you mean? I mean we can go after him for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion of marital assets, the works. And here's the beautiful part. Since you're still married, we can freeze joint accounts, force asset disclosure, and basically tie up everything he needs to run his business. My pulse quickened. How long would that take? If we move fast, we could have temporary restraining orders in place within a week. Freeze accounts, prevent him from making any major financial decisions without court approval, require him to account for every penny he's spent. What about the house? That's where it gets interesting. You have just as much right to that house as he does. There's no legal requirement for you to follow his house rules or accept his living arrangement. You could change the locks tomorrow if you wanted to. I thought about this. But that would tip him off that I'm planning something. True. Is there a strategic advantage to letting him think he's in control for a while longer? Maybe. I want to gather more evidence first. And I want to make sure my own finances are protected before I start the war. Jerome nodded approvingly. Smart. What assets do you have that are solely in your name? My business partnership with Imani, my 401k, and about $50,000 in a personal savings account that I opened before we got married. Good. We'll want to move that money to a new bank just to be safe. And your business, is Ryan involved in that at all? No. It's completely separate. Excellent. That's your safety net. Jerome picked up his pen again. Now let's talk strategy. Based on what you've told me, I think we have several options. For the next hour, Jerome laid out a plan that was both legally sound and strategically brilliant. First, we'd gather more evidence of Ryan's financial fraud. Then we'd quietly separate my assets and protect my credit. Finally, when we had everything in place, we'd hit him with everything at once: divorce papers, fraud charges, and asset freezing orders that would cripple his business overnight. The beauty of this approach, Jerome explained, is that by the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late for him to hide assets or transfer money. Everything will be locked down. How long will this take? If we're thorough? About 6 to 8 weeks to gather evidence and get everything in place. Then another few weeks to execute. You could be divorced and financially secure by Christmas. And he won't see it coming? Not if you play your part right. Keep being the compliant wife he expects. Let him think his arrangement is working. Meanwhile, we'll be building a case that will destroy him. I left Jerome's office feeling more hopeful than I had in days. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had some control over my future. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan: "Having dinner with Brittany at Chez Laurent tonight. Left money on the counter for you to order pizza." Chez Laurent was the most expensive restaurant in the city. The same restaurant where he'd taken Brittany multiple times using our joint credit card, while telling me he was working late. I texted back, "Thanks. Have fun. Let them have their expensive dinner." Every receipt was evidence. Every charge was another nail in his coffin. I drove home and walked into my house where Ryan and Brittany were getting ready for their date night. Brittany was wearing a dress that cost more than some people's rent, and Ryan was putting on the watch I'd bought him for our anniversary last year. "Oh good, you're back," Brittany said brightly. "Could you do me a huge favor and iron Ryan's shirt?" I tried, but I'm terrible at it. I looked at her holding out my husband's shirt, expecting me to iron it so he could look nice for their romantic dinner. The audacity was breathtaking. "Sure," I said, taking the shirt. Ryan smiled. "Thanks, babe. You're being really mature about all this." If only he knew how mature I was being. If only he knew that while I was ironing his shirt, I was also planning his complete financial destruction. As I pressed the iron against the fabric, I thought about Jerome's words: "Keep being the compliant wife he expects." Fine. I could play that role for a few more weeks. I could iron shirts and cook breakfast and sleep on the couch. Because every day I played along was another day to gather evidence, another day to protect my assets, another day closer to the moment when I would take everything away from him. Ryan and Brittany left for dinner, laughing and holding hands like teenagers. I watched them drive away in Ryan's BMW, the BMW we'd bought together with money from our joint account. Soon that car would be repossessed. Soon Ryan would lose everything he thought made him powerful. And soon I would be free. But first I had work to do. 3 weeks into my new life as a live-in servant, I had fallen into a routine that made me sick but was absolutely necessary for my plan. Every morning I woke up on the couch, made breakfast for Ryan and Brittany, and watched them act like newlyweds while I cleaned up their mess. But while they saw compliance, I was gathering evidence. I had photographed every receipt, documented every inappropriate charge on our joint accounts, and recorded conversations where Ryan discussed business matters that proved he was using our personal assets to prop up his failing company. The fake Coleman Consulting payments alone were enough to destroy him. But I wanted more than enough. I wanted overwhelming. "Zara, could you pick up my dry cleaning today?" Brittany asked, sliding a ticket across the breakfast table. "I have that black dress I need for tomorrow night." Tomorrow night was Ryan's Business Awards dinner, an event I'd attended with him for 5 years. This year apparently he was taking Brittany. "Of course," I said, taking the ticket. Ryan looked up from his phone. "Actually, that reminds me. I need you to transfer $20,000 from our investment account to the business checking account today. I have a deal closing and need the funds available." This was perfect. Another transaction I could document, another inappropriate use of our joint assets. "How much exactly?" I asked, pulling out my phone to make a note. $20,000. Transfer it by noon if you can." "Will do." What Ryan didn't know was that I'd already moved most of our liquid assets to new accounts. The investment account he was referring to now held mostly his money, not mine. When I transferred $20,000 today, it would be his own money he was spending, not ours. After they left Ryan to his office, Brittany to her yoga class, I got to work. First, I called Jerome with the update about Ryan's latest fund transfer request. He was building a timeline of financial impropriety that was becoming more damning by the day. "This is excellent," Jerome said. "He's creating a paper trail that shows a clear pattern of using marital assets for personal gain. How are you holding up?" Some days are harder than others, I admitted. Yesterday Brittany asked me to help her pick out lingerie for her anniversary with Ryan. Their 6-month anniversary. I'm sorry you're going through this. It's temporary. How much longer do we need? 2 more weeks, maybe 3. I want to make sure we have everything locked down before we make our move. After hanging up with Jerome, I called Imani. Our new business, Johnson & Associates Financial Planning, was almost ready to launch. We'd secured office space, gotten our licensing in order, and quietly reached out to potential clients. 3 more of Ryan's clients called today, Imani reported. Word is getting around that his company is having cash flow problems. They're asking about switching to us. Perfect. What about the Henderson account? They're ready to sign with us as soon as we're officially open. That's a $2 million portfolio, Zara. Ryan's going to lose his mind when he finds out. Good. He should have thought about that before he decided to betray me. The Henderson account was particularly sweet revenge. Ryan had been courting them for months, but they'd never fully trusted him. They preferred working with me but had stayed with Ryan's firm out of loyalty. Once they learned about our new company, they were eager to make the switch. I spent the afternoon at 3 different banks, opening new accounts and transferring my personal assets. Every move was legal and carefully documented. By the time Ryan discovered what I was doing, it would be too late for him to stop it. That evening, I was making dinner when Ryan came home looking stressed. Everything okay? I asked, stirring the pasta sauce. Just business stuff. Cash flow is tighter than usual, but nothing I can't handle. What he couldn't handle was what was coming next. Tomorrow, 3 of his biggest clients would be calling to terminate their contracts. Next week, his biggest investor would demand an audit after receiving an anonymous tip about financial irregularities. And the week after that, I would serve him with divorce papers that would freeze every joint asset he'd been using to keep his business afloat. Brittany bounced into the kitchen wearing a tennis outfit that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Smells amazing in here, she said, kissing Ryan on the cheek. You're so lucky to have Zara cooking for you. I never learned how to make anything this fancy. It's just pasta, I said. Still, it's sweet of you to take care of us like this. She turned to Ryan. Did you tell her about tomorrow night? Tell me what? Ryan cleared his throat. The Business Awards dinner tomorrow. I'm getting a recognition award for outstanding achievement in real estate development. An award he was getting based on business success that was built on stolen money from our marriage. That's great, I said. Congratulations. Brittany's going to be my date, he added, watching my face for a reaction. I figured. Have fun. Brittany beamed. I'm so excited. I've never been to anything this fancy before. Ryan bought me the most beautiful dress. With my money, I thought. Using my credit. While I sleep on the couch and iron his shirts. I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time, I said. After dinner, I did the dishes while they cuddled on the couch watching Netflix. A year ago that had been Ryan and me on that couch. A year ago, I thought we were building a life together. Now I was building something different. I was building his destruction, piece by piece, transaction by transaction, evidence by evidence. My phone buzzed with a text from Jerome. Got the bank records you requested. This is even worse than we thought. Are you ready to move to the next phase? I typed back, more than ready. As I turned off the kitchen lights and prepared for another night on the couch, I allowed myself a small smile. Tomorrow night, Ryan would be celebrating his award, toasting his success, showing off his young girlfriend to all his business colleagues. He had no idea it would be the last time he'd have anything to celebrate. The morning of Ryan's awards dinner, I woke up early and did something I hadn't done in weeks. I got dressed up. Nothing too dramatic, just a nice blouse and slacks instead of the yoga pants and t-shirts I'd been wearing around the house. When Ryan came downstairs for breakfast, he did a double take. You look nice today. Going somewhere special? Just meeting with some clients, I said, pouring him coffee. Imani and I are considering expanding our services. It wasn't a lie. We were expanding by stealing his clients. Brittany appeared in the kitchen wearing a silk robe that I was pretty sure used to be mine. Ooh, Zara, you look so professional. I wish I could dress like that for work. Don't you have a job? I asked innocently. Well, not exactly. Ryan thinks I should focus on making our home life perfect instead of working. He says he makes enough for both of us. Making our home life perfect. While I slept on the couch and cleaned their bathrooms. That's nice that he can support you, I said. I know, right? I'm so lucky. She turned to Ryan. What time should I be ready tonight? 6:30. The car will pick us up at 7. The car. A limo service that would be charged to our joint business account, no doubt. I left the house feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Today was the day everything started to fall apart for Ryan, and he had no idea. My first stop was Jerome's office, where we finalized the last details of our plan. Everything's in place, he said, spreading papers across his conference table. Tomorrow morning we file divorce papers and the motion to freeze joint assets. By noon, Ryan won't be able to access any of the accounts he's been using to fund his business. And the fraud charges? Those will come later, once the divorce proceedings expose the full extent of his financial misconduct. But the immediate goal is to cut off his access to your money. I signed document after document, each one another step toward freedom. How are you feeling about all this? Jerome asked as I finished signing. Like I'm finally fighting back instead of just surviving. Good. That's exactly the mindset you need. From Jerome's office, I went to meet Imani at our new business location. The sign wasn't up yet, but inside, our office was beautiful, modern, professional, and completely separate from anything Ryan had ever touched. The Henderson account officially signed this morning, Imani reported. $2 million in assets, plus they're referring 3 of their friends to us. What about the others? Morrison Industries called Ryan this morning to terminate their contract. So did the Patel Group and Sterling Construction. That's about 40% of his client base, gone in one day. I felt a surge of satisfaction. How did he react? According to my friend who works at his office, he was screaming at his secretary for an hour. Apparently, he thinks there's some conspiracy against him. If only he knew how right he was. My phone rang. It was Ryan. Zara, I need you to transfer another $30,000 to the business account immediately. $30,000? That's a lot. I know, but I'm dealing with some unexpected client issues. I need to show liquidity to keep my remaining investors confident. Okay. From which account? The emergency fund. The emergency fund that was now mostly empty because I'd moved the money to accounts he couldn't access. I'll take care of it, I said. But what I actually did was transfer $30,000 of his own money from the account where I'd been storing his business funds. Technically, I was following his instructions. I was just using his money instead of mine. By 3 o'clock, Ryan was panicking. His assistant called me twice asking about fund transfers that should have gone through but hadn't. His accountant called asking why several accounts showed unexpected low balances. At 4 o'clock, Ryan called me directly. Zara, there's something wrong with our accounts. I'm seeing transfers that don't make sense and balances that are way lower than they should be. That's weird, I said. Maybe there's a system error? You should call the bank. I did. They said all the transactions were authorized. By who? By me, apparently. But I didn't authorize half of these transfers. Of course he didn't. I had authorized them, using the power of attorney he'd given me and forgotten about. Maybe you should come home and we can look at everything together, I suggested. I can't. I have the awards dinner tonight and I'm already behind schedule because of this mess. I'm sure it'll work out. By the time I got home, Ryan was in full crisis mode. He was on the phone with his business partner, pacing around the living room in his tuxedo, his face red with stress. I don't care what the numbers say, he was shouting. We had enough liquidity this morning to cover everything. Brittany was sitting on the couch in her fancy new dress, looking confused and worried. Is everything okay? She whispered to me. Just some business problems, I said. I'm sure Ryan will figure it out. Ryan hung up the phone and turned to me. Zara, I need you to call every bank we work with and demand they reverse any transactions made today. Something is seriously wrong. Tonight? Ryan, it's almost 7. The banks are closed. Then call the emergency numbers. The limo's here, Brittany said quietly, looking out the window. Ryan ran his hands through his hair, messing up the style Brittany had spent an hour perfecting. I can't deal with this tonight. I'll have to figure it out tomorrow. He turned to me. First thing in the morning, we're going to sort this out. Of course, I said. Don't worry about it tonight. Just enjoy your award. Ryan and Brittany left for the dinner, but the mood was completely different from what they'd planned. Instead of a celebration, Ryan spent the car ride on his phone trying to reach bank managers and investors. As I watched the limo pull away, I felt a sense of satisfaction that was almost overwhelming. Ryan was getting his award tonight, but he was also getting his first taste of what it felt like to lose control. Tomorrow, when he tried to fix his financial problems, he would discover that they were much worse than he imagined. Tomorrow, he would learn that I wasn't the compliant wife he thought I was. Tomorrow, his whole world would collapse. But tonight, I was going to sleep in my own bed for the first time in weeks. Because tomorrow I was taking my house back too. I slept better that night than I had in months. Not just because I was finally back in my own bed, but because I knew that in a few hours Ryan's world was going to explode. At exactly 9 a.m., Jerome filed the divorce papers and the emergency motion to freeze all joint assets. At 9:15, the court clerk called every bank where we had accounts to notify them of the asset freeze. At 9:30, Ryan's business accounts were locked down completely. I was making coffee when my phone started ringing. Zara? Ryan's voice was panicked. Something's wrong with all our accounts. I can't access anything: business accounts, personal accounts, credit cards. Everything's been frozen. Frozen? Why would they be frozen? I don't know. The bank says there's some kind of legal hold on them. They won't tell me anything else. I could hear Brittany in the background asking what was happening. That's so strange, I said. Maybe you should call a lawyer? I'm trying to, but I can't even pay my lawyer because my accounts are frozen. There was a long pause. Then Ryan's voice, quieter now. Zara, you wouldn't? I wouldn't what? File for divorce. Behind my back. Ryan, that's crazy. Why would I do that when we had an arrangement? Another pause. I could almost hear him thinking, trying to figure out if I was capable of this level of deception. I have to go, he said finally. I need to figure this out. After he hung up, I called Jerome. How's it going on your end? I asked. Better than we hoped. Ryan just called 3 different lawyers trying to get representation, but word is getting around about the asset freeze. Most attorneys won't take a case when they're not sure they'll get paid. And the business accounts? Completely locked down. He can't make payroll, can't pay vendors, can't access any of the funds he needs to keep his company running. How long before his business partners find out? I'd say by this afternoon. Maybe sooner. Jerome was right. By noon, Ryan's business partner, Marcus Thompson, was banging on our front door. Where the hell is Ryan? He demanded when I answered. He's not here. He went to try to sort out some banking issues. Banking issues? Our entire company is frozen. I can't pay my employees, I can't access our project funds, I can't even buy lunch. I'm sorry, I don't really understand the business side of things. Don't give me that innocent act, Marcus snapped. I know you handle all of Ryan's financial planning. What did you do? Before I could answer, Brittany appeared behind me. What's all the shouting about? She asked. Marcus looked back and forth between us, his expression changing from anger to disgust. Unbelievable. Ryan destroys our business and his marriage, and you two are just hanging out here like nothing happened. I don't understand, Brittany said. What business? The business that's about to go bankrupt because your boyfriend used company assets to fund his affair with you. Brittany's face went white. What? Those jewelry receipts, the expensive dinners, the hotel rooms, all paid for with company money. Money that wasn't his to spend. I watched Brittany process this information. She was young and naive, but she wasn't stupid. She was starting to realize that her fairy tale relationship was built on stolen money. Where is Ryan now? Marcus demanded. I honestly don't know, I said. He left this morning to deal with the banking situation. Marcus stormed off, leaving Brittany and me standing in the doorway. Zara, Brittany said quietly, what Marcus said about the money, is that true? I don't know all the details of Ryan's business dealings. But you handle his finances, right? You would know if he was using company money for personal expenses. I looked at this young woman who had helped destroy my marriage, who had moved into my house and expected me to serve her, who had been so smug about stealing my husband. Brittany, I think you should ask Ryan about that. She nodded slowly and walked back into the house. I could see her starting to put the pieces together: the expensive gifts, the lavish lifestyle, the fact that Ryan could afford to support her without her working. It was all starting to make sense, and none of it was legal. Around 3 o'clock, Ryan came home looking like he'd aged 10 years in one day. We need to talk, he said to me. Of course. Brittany was sitting on the couch and she looked up when Ryan walked in. Marcus came by earlier. He said some things about company money being used for personal expenses. What did he mean? Ryan shot me a look that could have melted steel. Can we have some privacy, Brittany? No, she said, standing up. I want to know what he meant. Did you use business money to pay for our relationship? It's complicated. It's not complicated. Brittany's voice was getting higher. It's a simple question. Did you steal money to pay for our dates and my gifts and this whole lifestyle? Ryan looked back and forth between us, probably trying to figure out how much we knew. Some transactions may have been categorized incorrectly. Categorized incorrectly? I interrupted. Ryan, you created a fake consulting company to pay Brittany while she was already on your payroll. You refinanced our rental properties without telling me and used the money for personal expenses. You've been systematically stealing from our joint accounts for months. You filed for divorce, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. And you froze all our accounts. I froze accounts that you were stealing from, yes. Brittany looked between us like she was watching a tennis match. You planned this whole thing, Ryan said. All those weeks of playing along, acting like you accepted our arrangement, you were planning to destroy me. I was planning to protect myself from a thief. A thief? Brittany repeated. Ryan, are you a thief? Ryan turned to her with an expression of pure frustration. Brittany, you don't understand business. Sometimes you have to move money around to steal it, I finished. Ryan, there's no point in lying anymore. I have documentation of every fraudulent transaction, every fake invoice, every inappropriate use of power of attorney. You're not just getting divorced, you're probably going to jail. The color drained from Ryan's face. Jail? Brittany whispered. Financial fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, the list is pretty long, I said. Brittany sat down heavily on the couch. I can't. I didn't know. I thought you were successful, Ryan. I thought you could afford to take care of me. I can afford it. This is just a temporary setback. A temporary setback? I laughed. Ryan, your business is ruined. Your clients have fired you. Your accounts are frozen. Your business partner is probably talking to lawyers right now about suing you. This isn't temporary, this is permanent. Ryan stared at me with a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. You did this. You planned all of this. You did this when you decided to steal from me and humiliate me. I just made sure you faced consequences for it. Brittany was crying now. I need to call my mom. I need to go home. Your home is here, Ryan said desperately. My home is not with a criminal, she replied, standing up. I'm packing my stuff. As Brittany headed upstairs, Ryan turned back to me. Zara, we can fix this. We can work something out. No, we can't. You made your choice when you brought her into our house and tried to make me your servant. Now you get to live with the consequences. Ryan stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him finally understanding that the meek, compliant wife he thought he married had never really existed. I had always been smart, strategic, and capable of protecting myself. He just hadn't been paying attention. The next morning, I woke up alone in my house for the first time in weeks. Brittany had packed her bags and left the night before, calling her mother to pick her up while crying about how she'd been deceived and manipulated. Ryan had spent the night at a hotel, probably trying to figure out if there was any way to salvage his collapsing life. There wasn't. I was making coffee when Jerome called with an update. Ryan's business partner filed a lawsuit against him yesterday afternoon, Jerome reported. He's claiming fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. The damages they're seeking would bankrupt him even if he hadn't already lost everything. What about criminal charges? The district attorney's office called this morning. They're very interested in the case. Apparently, Ryan's business practices have been on their radar for a while, and your evidence is exactly what they needed to move forward. I felt a surge of satisfaction. How long before he's arrested? Could be days, could be weeks. These things take time. But Zara, there's something else you should know. What? Ryan hired a lawyer yesterday, Leonard Morrison. He's expensive and ruthless, and he specializes in defending white-collar criminals. Can he get Ryan out of this? Probably not. The evidence is too overwhelming. But he might try to drag you down with him, claim you were complicit in the fraud, that you knew about the illegal transactions and benefited from them. But that's not true. I know that, and the evidence supports that. But Morrison might try to paint you as an accomplice rather than a victim. We need to be prepared for that. After hanging up with Jerome, I called Imani to check on our business. 3 more clients signed with us yesterday, she reported. Word is spreading fast about Ryan's problems, and people want to move their money to a more stable firm. That's great news. There's more. Remember the Johansson account? The big commercial real estate portfolio that Ryan's been chasing for 2 years. Yes. They called us yesterday. They want to meet about switching their business to us. The Johansson account was worth over $5 million in managed assets. If we landed that account, our new firm would be profitable from day one. Schedule the meeting, I said. This is our chance to really establish ourselves. Already done. Tomorrow at 2. As I was finishing my coffee, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Johnson, this is Leonard Morrison. I represent your husband. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss the current situation. Ryan's lawyer. This should be interesting. What kind of meeting? A settlement discussion. I think we can resolve this matter without the need for lengthy litigation that would be expensive for everyone involved. Mr. Morrison, you're welcome to discuss settlement terms with my attorney, Jerome Williams. Of course. But I thought it might be helpful if we could speak directly, since you're the one who initiated these proceedings. I almost laughed. He was trying to get me to negotiate without my lawyer present a classic intimidation tactic. Mr. Morrison, any communication regarding my divorce will go through my attorney. You have his contact information. Mrs. Johnson, I want you to understand that if this case goes to trial, we'll be forced to examine your role in your husband's business dealings. There might be uncomfortable questions about your knowledge of certain transactions. There was the threat Jerome had warned me about. Are you suggesting I was involved in criminal activity? I'm suggesting that marriages are partnerships, and wives often know more about their husband's business than they let on. It would be unfortunate if you became entangled in criminal proceedings. Mr. Morrison, if you're threatening me, you should know that this conversation is being recorded. It wasn't, but the silence on the other end told me he wasn't sure. Mrs. Johnson, I'm simply trying to avoid unnecessary complications. The only unnecessary complication is this phone call. Contact my attorney. I hung up and immediately called Jerome to report the conversation. He's fishing, Jerome said. Trying to see if you'll panic and agree to some kind of deal that protects Ryan. The fact that he's already trying this means he knows how bad Ryan's situation is. What should I expect next? Probably more intimidation tactics. Maybe some creative legal theories about why you should be held responsible for Ryan's crimes. Don't worry, none of it will stick. You have clean hands in this situation. That afternoon, I drove to our new office to meet with Imani and prepare for the Johansson meeting. As I was walking from my car to the building, a man approached me. Mrs. Johnson? I stopped. He was middle-aged, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a briefcase. I'm Detective Rodriguez with the Financial Crimes Unit. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about your husband's business practices. A detective. This was moving faster than I'd expected. Of course. Should I have my lawyer present? That's your right, but you're not under investigation. We're hoping you can help us understand some of the transactions we've discovered. I thought about it. I had nothing to hide, and cooperating with the police could only help my case. Okay. What do you want to know? For the next hour, Detective Rodriguez asked detailed questions about Ryan's business, our joint accounts, and the suspicious transactions I'd discovered. I showed him everything: the fake consulting payments, the unauthorized property refinancing, the systematic theft from our savings accounts. Mrs. Johnson, you've been very helpful, he said when we finished. One last question: why didn't you report this fraud when you first discovered it? I was scared, I said honestly. Ryan convinced me that divorce would ruin us both financially. I thought I had to choose between being humiliated and being poor. But you found a third option. I found a way to protect myself while making sure he faced consequences for what he did. Detective Rodriguez smiled. Smart woman. As he walked away, I realized that Ryan's situation was even worse than I'd thought. The police weren't just interested in building a case, they already had one. They were just gathering additional evidence to make sure their charges would stick. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You'll regret destroying me. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Jerome. Ryan was clearly panicking, making threats he couldn't back up. But he was right about one thing: this wasn't over. Not until he was in jail where he belonged, and I had built a new life completely separate from his destruction. That process was already underway. Tomorrow, I would secure the Johansson account and establish my new business as a major player in the financial services industry. Next week, I would close on the sale of our joint assets and walk away with enough money to start fresh. And eventually, I would find someone who deserved my trust and love someone who would never make me choose between dignity and security. But first, I had to finish destroying the man who had tried to destroy me. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my new office, a beautiful space with floor-to-ceiling windows and my name on the door, when Jerome called with news I'd been waiting for. Ryan was arrested this morning, he said. 6 counts of fraud, 3 counts of embezzlement, and 2 counts of tax evasion. I set down my coffee cup carefully. How long will he be in jail? If convicted on all counts? Probably 15 to 20 years. His bail was set at $2 million. Can he make bail? Not unless he has money hidden somewhere we don't know about. All his assets are either frozen or already sold to pay debts. I felt a wave of relief so strong it was almost overwhelming. For the first time in months, I could truly relax. Ryan couldn't hurt me anymore. He couldn't threaten me, steal from me, or try to manipulate me into accepting his twisted version of marriage. What about the divorce? That's moving forward quickly now. With his criminal charges, he's not in a position to fight any of our demands. The house is yours, the business assets are yours, and he'll be responsible for all the debts his fraud created. And Brittany? She's apparently been cooperating with the police investigation. Turns out she has records of all the gifts Ryan gave her, all the trips he paid for, all the expenses he covered. She's handing everything over in exchange for immunity. So Brittany had finally figured out that being involved with stolen money made her an accessory to Ryan's crimes. Smart girl, too bad she hadn't been that smart 6 months ago. After hanging up with Jerome, I called Imani to share the news. "It's really over?" she asked. "It's really over. Ryan's in jail, the divorce will be final next month, and we landed 3 more major accounts this week. I can't believe we did it. 6 months ago, you were sleeping on your own couch while he played house with his girlfriend. Now you're running the most successful financial planning firm in the city." "We're running it," I corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. So what's next?" I looked around our office and thought about everything we'd built. Johnson and Associates Financial Planning was thriving beyond our wildest expectations. We had over $10 million in assets under management, a waiting list of potential clients, and a reputation for integrity that stood in stark contrast to Ryan's spectacular downfall. Next, we keep growing the business. And maybe I start thinking about having a personal life again. "Speaking of which," Imani said with a sly tone, "has Jerome asked you out yet?" I laughed. Jerome and I had definitely developed feelings for each other during the long months of legal planning and strategy sessions. He was smart, ethical, and had been nothing but supportive during the worst period of my life. He's waiting until the divorce is final. Very professional of him. And very smart. The man knows a good thing when he sees it. That evening, I drove home to my house, legally and completely mine now. The foreclosure notice that Ryan had been so worried about had been resolved when I bought out his half of the mortgage using money from the sale of our investment properties. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw a familiar car parked across the street. My heart rate spiked for a moment before I realized it wasn't Ryan's car. He was in jail and his BMW had been repossessed weeks ago. The car belonged to Detective Rodriguez. He got out as I parked and walked over with a friendly smile. "Mrs. Johnson, sorry to bother you at home. I have some news I thought you'd want to hear in person." "Good news or bad news?" "Depends on your perspective. Ryan's lawyer approached the DA about a plea deal today." "What kind of plea deal?" "Full confession to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's looking at 12 years instead of 20. I thought about this. 12 years was still a long time, long enough for me to build a completely new life, long enough to ensure he could never threaten me again. Is the DA going to accept it? Probably. A guaranteed conviction is better than the risk of a trial, even with evidence as strong as ours. What about restitution? That's the interesting part. Ryan's assets won't cover even a fraction of what he stole, but his confession includes details about other illegal activities we didn't know about. The information he's providing will help us prosecute several other white-collar criminals. So he's trading information for a lighter sentence. Exactly. But Mrs. Johnson, 12 years is still 12 years. He'll be 50 when he gets out, with a felony record and no business prospects. His life as he knew it is over. After Detective Rodriguez left, I sat in my living room, the same living room where Ryan had handed me his house rules, where Brittany had explained how they expected me to serve them, and marveled at how completely everything had changed. 6 months ago I was a victim. Tonight I was a successful businesswoman with a thriving company, a beautiful home, and the freedom to live my life however I wanted. My phone rang. It was Jerome. "I heard about Ryan's plea deal," he said. "News travels fast. Are you okay with it?" I thought about the question. Was I okay with Ryan only getting 12 years instead of 20? Was I okay with him eventually getting out of prison and trying to rebuild his life? "I'm okay with it," I said finally. 12 years is long enough. By the time he gets out, I'll be so far removed from this chapter of my life that he'll be irrelevant. Good. You deserve to move forward, not spend the rest of your life looking backward. Jerome, when this is all over, when the divorce is final and the criminal case is settled, would you like to have dinner? A real dinner, not a legal strategy session. I thought you'd never ask. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. It's a date. As I hung up the phone, I realized that revenge had been satisfying, but it wasn't the most important thing I'd gained from this experience. The most important thing was learning that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, strong enough to stand up for myself, smart enough to outmaneuver someone who underestimated me, and resilient enough to rebuild my entire life from the ground up. Ryan had tried to break me, to reduce me to a servant in my own home. Instead, he'd created a formidable enemy who had systematically destroyed everything he thought made him powerful. But I wasn't his enemy anymore. I was simply a successful woman who had moved on with her life, leaving him behind in the wreckage of his own making. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. 1 year later, I stood in front of the mirror in my new master bathroom, getting ready for the biggest night of my professional life. Tonight, Johnson & Associates Financial Planning was being honored as Firm of the Year by the State Financial Advisors Association, the same organization that had given Ryan his Outstanding Achievement Award the night his world started falling apart. "You ready for this?" Imani called from the living room. "Almost," I replied, fastening the diamond earrings I'd bought myself last month to celebrate our firm's success. In the year since Ryan's arrest, my life had transformed beyond recognition. Our business now managed over $50 million in assets. We'd hired 6 additional advisors and moved into a larger office building. Most importantly, we'd built a reputation for integrity and client service that attracted successful people who wanted their money managed by someone they could trust. "Your chariot awaits," Jerome said from the doorway, looking handsome in his tuxedo. "We've been dating for 8 months now, taking things slowly but steadily, building something real and healthy." Jerome was everything Ryan had never been: honest, supportive, and secure enough in himself to celebrate my success rather than feel threatened by it. "How do I look?" I asked, smoothing down my dress. "Like the most successful woman in the city," he said, kissing my cheek. As we drove to the award ceremony, I thought about how far I'd come from that terrible day when I'd walked into my bedroom to find Brittany in my bed. That broken woman sleeping on her own couch seemed like a stranger now. "Nervous?" Jerome asked. "A little. Good nervous, though." The ceremony was being held at the city's most prestigious hotel, the same hotel where Ryan used to take his clients for expensive dinners that he charged to our joint accounts. Tonight, I was here as the guest of honor. When we arrived, I was surprised by how many people I knew. Former clients of Ryan's who had switched their business to us, competitors who had become colleagues, and industry leaders who treated me as an equal. "Zara," called a familiar voice. I turned to see Margaret Johansson, the client whose account had helped launch our firm's success. "Congratulations. This recognition is so well deserved." "Thank you, Margaret. I'm still a little shocked by it all." "Don't be shocked. Be proud. You've built something remarkable." During the cocktail hour, several people asked me about Ryan. His case had been big news in the business community, and everyone knew the story, or at least the public version of it. "Have you heard from him?" asked Tom Chin, a former colleague. "No," I said simply. "And I hope I never do." "He really had everyone fooled," Tom said, shaking his head. "I mean, we all thought he was successful." "He was successful," I corrected, "at stealing and lying. He just wasn't successful at building anything real." When it was time for dinner, Imani and I were seated at the head table with the other award recipients and industry leaders. As I looked around the room, I realized that several people there had been victimized by Ryan in one way or another: clients he'd overcharged, business partners he'd deceived, competitors he'd tried to undermine. "Ladies and gentlemen," the presenter began, "our Firm of the Year award recognizes not just financial success, but ethical leadership and community service. This year's winner has built a practice based on transparency, integrity, and genuine care for client needs." I felt Jerome squeeze my hand under the table. Johnson & Associates Financial Planning has grown from a startup to a major firm in just 12 months, while maintaining the highest standards of professional conduct. Their client retention rate is 98%, their community charitable giving exceeds industry standards by 400%, and their business practices have become a model for ethical financial services. The applause was thunderous as I walked to the podium to accept the award. As I looked out at the crowd, I saw faces that represented my new life: clients who trusted me, colleagues who respected me, and friends who supported me. "Thank you for this incredible honor," I began. "A year ago, I was starting over professionally and personally. I had to rebuild my practice, my reputation, and my life from the ground up." I paused, thinking about everything I'd survived and overcome. The most important thing I learned during that rebuilding process is that success built on someone else's failure is never sustainable. Real success comes from helping others achieve their goals, from treating people with respect and honesty, and from building something that makes the world a little bit better. More applause. In the back of the room, I spotted a familiar face, Detective Rodriguez, who had become something of a friend during Ryan's prosecution. I also learned that when someone tries to diminish you, the best response isn't to diminish them back. The best response is to become so successful, so happy, and so fulfilled that their opinion becomes irrelevant. As I returned to my seat with my award, I felt a sense of completion that I'd never expected. I wasn't just successful, I was genuinely happy. I had work that mattered, relationships that nourished me, and a future full of possibilities. After the ceremony, as we were leaving the hotel, Jerome stopped me on the steps. "There's something I want to ask you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. My heart stopped. "Zara, you're the strongest, smartest, most incredible woman I've ever met. You turned the worst betrayal into the best comeback I've ever seen. Will you marry me?" I looked at the ring, a beautiful solitaire that was elegant without being flashy, and then at Jerome's face. He was nervous, hopeful, and completely sincere. "Yes," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, I realized that this was what real love looked like. Not the desperate clinging and manipulation I'd experienced with Ryan, but a partnership between equals who brought out the best in each other. "I love you," Jerome whispered. "I love you too." 6 months later, we were married in a small ceremony in my backyard, the same backyard where Ryan had once planned to install a pool with money stolen from our joint accounts. Instead of stolen money, our wedding was paid for with profits from my successful business. Instead of fake friends who only cared about appearances, we were surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported us. As I danced with my new husband under twinkling lights in the garden I'd redesigned myself, I thought about the letter I'd received last week from Ryan's prison. I hadn't opened it, I'd thrown it away without reading it. Whatever he had to say, I wasn't interested in hearing it. I had moved on completely. I had built a new life that was better than anything I'd had before. I was successful, loved, and free from the toxicity that had once defined my existence. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy, it's becoming so happy and successful that you forget they ever existed. And that's exactly what I had done. As the song ended and Jerome spun me around, I caught sight of Imani dancing with her new boyfriend, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. My business partner and best friend had found her own happiness too. We'd all risen from the ashes of Ryan's betrayal, and we'd built something beautiful in its place. The past was gone. The future was bright. And I was exactly where I belonged.